This is a 1950 Farmall Super A, a little different from some of the sports cars that I like to play with. It's got a belly mount blade on it. It's a four-cylinder. I don't. Do you know how much horsepower it's rated for?
It's about 23.
23 horsepower. All right. It probably weighs, I don't know, 4,000 pounds, 5,000 pounds. It's a lot of steel in there. You can see weights on the front wheels. Those kind of donut things are weights, and then the rear wheels have weights as well to keep the center of gravity low.
It's heavyweight on this side, don't forget.
So the weight on the right side is a heavier weight than the left side, and part of that is because the engine and kind of the whole drive line is offset to the side, which gives the operator a good view of the crops that are in front, a good view of what's going on.
Cultivated.
It was called cultivision, so you could see what you were cultivating. So you can really tell how offset the main part of the tractor, the engine is. It's pretty simple. You can see the generator on the side there. It's got a single carburetor, single barrel carburetor. It's got that kind of red canister that's vertical as the air cleaner, so it sucks air from the little cap on the top there. It goes into the carburetor and into the head, and then right back out the exhaust. The oil level is no dipstick. You just have a little petcock there, so you can see that the oil level goes to that line, which is at the bottom of that hole. So if you open that up and your oil's at the bottom of the threads, then you're good to go. There's actually these two gauges are high and low, so you can see that the left one is a little bit higher. So you want to be between those two levels there, and that's your optimum level. Your clutch bell housing is here, and then going to the back. The back has a drawbar for pulling. It has, under that little orange cap is the power takeoff shaft. And then there's also a power takeoff wheel, this black kind of round wheel. So that would be for a belt drive, for like a stationary piece of equipment, a saw or a pump or something like that. And then these arms here, these are lift arms. So those are hydraulically operated, so you could raise or lower your implement. And then, of course, the blade is hydraulically operated to raise and lower the blade. You can see the lift arm right over here over the starter that lifts that up. A few more interesting things to point out is that the water gauge is right in the front, right by the radiator. You can see it has a cold, a run, and a hot zone on the water gauge. See if I can zoom in on that a little bit. And it's kind of right by the distributor. So this isn't a distributor ignition. Some old tractors have a magneto. This is just kind of post that era. So you can see a regular distributor and an ignition coil. And then you have your oil filter. Your oil filter is a cartridge filter right there. And actually on the back of the oil filter, you actually have your oil pressure gauge. So that's your oil pressure gauge right there where the action's happening. Instead of trying to run a long line or have a sender and a gauge, it's a much simpler setup. And the 6-volt battery, it actually has an AM gauge, whether it's charging, that's the gauge right there to the back, whether it's discharging or charging. Now we're really into the nuts and bolts of it. So you can see how the intake manifold is really just this part of the casting. So it's really just two runners, and then the first and second cylinders share the intake from here, and then the third and fourth cylinders share it from there. And then the exhaust, so this is your number one exhaust runner. The center kind of part, so 2 and 3 are sharing their exhaust ports in the middle runner, and then the fourth cylinder is having that exhaust port there. So not exactly a trick high flow head, but for a tractor it works perfectly. And then in the front end of the engine, it's again pretty simple. You've got your fan, metal fan blades, which the fan is powered by the front belt, which is running off of the crankshaft, and then the secondary belt here is for the generator to charge the battery. Now it's a DC generator, it's not an alternator. A modern car uses an alternator, which is an AC current, and it has to then be converted to DC, where this is a generator. It makes just DC current. But a few things to notice: there's no water pump on this. The top of the radiator just has a rubber pipe that goes into the block, And then the bottom, there's just a pipe going out. So it relies on just convection. Just hot water rises and gets sucked in. A big cast block. You know, it does have overhead valves. This is valve cover with a little breather pipe there. Is just, I guess, your emissions. So there's going to be push rods in this engine, and the push rods are going up and operating the valves. So that would be a camshaft in the block. The part that's driving the distributor, this kind of casing here, that's also, the front of it is your hydraulic pump. So you see your hydraulic lines coming out through the bottom and then going along the side of the engine there. And then that same kind of drive that runs the pump is running your distributor for your timing. So here's the operating position from the Super A. So the steering wheel is, kind of on this offset shaft, going down to the steering box in the front where the headlight is. And you've got 3 pedals. You've got the clutch on the left, and then the brake. You've got a brake pedal for each wheel in this little connector bar, so you can unhook that, and then you can operate the brake wheels independently if you're making a really sharp turn or something like that. And then your throttle is this lever right here. So it's kind of a, you set the throttle and it's fixed. These 2 levers are the hydraulic implement, raising and lowering. This is for the front implement, the blade, and this is for the rear implement. You've got your choke, the little ring down here on the side, and this lever right there on the left side is actually for shutters in front of the radiator. You can, in the winter, you can control how far open or closed you want the shutters for how much cooling you have. If the tractor doesn't warm up all the way, it's not going to run as efficiently. You can see the shutters inside the radiator housing opening and closing with the movement of that lever. So when they're open, more air goes through for cooling. So in the winter, you would want it in that position, in the closed position. Your shift lever here, it's got a 4-speed plus reverse. You can see it on the casting. And then you've got your ignition switch and your headlight switch. And then your starter, to activate the starter button, is this little rod right here. But when you're actually driving, you get a pretty good view of what's in front of you and what's below you. Under the seat pivots up. There's actually a little tool tray that you have there. You can keep some tools with you, or perhaps your lunch if you're working in the field all day. What to point out is that the track width is adjustable. This beam, which holds the pivot arms for the wheels, can slide in and out of that main beam there. And then your steering tie rods also have a slip joint, so they can slide. So depending on your crops, you could actually change your track width. You could make it wider or narrower. The rear track width, you can see the mounting flanges on the rim, that silver rim there with the bolt going through. So you can mount the rim or the hubs, flip them around and change your track width. And you can see that on the left side, the side with the engine and transmission, that main hub is a piece of stamped steel. But on the right-hand side, it's actually a bigger cast iron piece because, again, they wanted more weight on the right-hand side of the tractor to keep it pretty balanced.